For thousands of years, this planet wasn't ours alone. We shared it with others, not aliens, not mythical creatures, humans. They walked the same valleys, they hunted the same animals, they gathered around the same fires, and they looked up at the same night sky. Today, more than 8 billion people live on Earth. Every one of us belongs to a single human species, Homo sapiens. But for most of our history, we weren't alone. So what happened to everyone else? This is one of the greatest mysteries in human history, because the real question isn't why they disappeared, it's why we survived. Imagine traveling back 40,000 years. You step into a vast valley just as the morning mist begins to lift. At first, everything feels familiar. The wind moves through the trees. Birds call in the distance. A herd of wild horses grazes peacefully across the open plain. Then, you notice something unexpected. You're not the only human here. Across the valley, another group watches the same herd. They aren't Homo sapiens. They're Neanderthals. A few kilometers away, another human family is beginning their day. Far to the east, the mysterious Denisovans still walk the forests. And on a small island in Indonesia, tiny humans known today as Homo floresiensis continue their lives. For one brief moment in history, Earth was home to many kinds of humans. Not one, many. For centuries, we believed we were the only humans who had ever truly mattered. But every new discovery has forced us to rewrite our own story. Let's begin with the most famous of our lost relatives, the Neanderthals. For more than 100,000 years, they thrived across Europe and Western Asia. These weren't primitive cave dwellers. They were expert hunters. They crafted sophisticated stone tools with remarkable precision. They controlled fire, built shelters, made clothing from animal hides, and cared for members of their families who were too old or too injured to survive alone. Some even buried their dead, not because they had to, but perhaps because they cared. The more scientists uncovered, the harder it became to think of Neanderthals as anything less than human. Different, yes, but undeniably human. The Neanderthals weren't alone. There was another branch of our family, one so mysterious that for thousands of years, no one even knew they had existed. In 2008, deep inside a cave in Siberia, archaeologists discovered a tiny finger bone. At first, it didn't seem remarkable. It was just another ancient fossil. But when scientists extracted DNA from that small fragment, they uncovered something extraordinary. The bone didn't belong to a Neanderthal, and it didn't belong to a modern human. It belonged to an entirely different human species, one we had never known before. Today, we call them the Denisovans. Unlike the Neanderthals, we still don't know exactly what they looked like. No complete skeleton has ever been found. Just a handful of bones, a few teeth, and the remarkable story written inside their DNA. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries in history begin with the smallest clues. Our ancient family was even more extraordinary than scientists first imagined. On a small island in Indonesia, researchers uncovered the remains of a human unlike any ever seen before. Standing just over 1 meter tall, they looked almost like children, but they weren't children. They were fully grown adults. Today, we know them as Homo floresiensis. Many people call them the Hobbit. Despite their small size, they survived on their island for thousands of years. They crafted sharp stone tools. They hunted. They adapted to a world completely isolated from the rest of humanity. How did they become so small? Scientists believe that living on a remote island for countless generations may have changed their bodies through evolution. On islands, limited food and isolation can drive animals, and sometimes even humans, to evolve in unexpected ways. It was another reminder that there was never just one way to be human. There were many, each species solving the same problem, survival, in its own unique way. So, what happened? If Neanderthals were skilled hunters, If Denisovans survived across Asia, if Homo floresiensis adapted to life on an isolated island, why is every one of them gone? For a long time, people believed there had to be one simple answer. Maybe we were smarter. Maybe we were stronger. Maybe we fought them and won. Sounds like the perfect ending to a story, but science tells a different one. The truth is, no single discovery has ever explained their disappearance. Not one battle, not one disease, not one disaster. Instead, the evidence points to something far more complicated. A story written over thousands of years. A story of changing climates, shrinking populations, competition, cooperation, adaptation, and chance. The question was never, who was the strongest? The real question was, who could survive a world that never stopped changing? Imagine waking up one winter and realizing the world around you has changed. The river your family depended on is frozen solid. The forest where you hunted has become an empty grassland. The animals you followed for generations have disappeared. This wasn't a single bad season. It happened again and again over thousands of years. During the last ice age, Earth's climate was constantly changing. Glaciers expanded across entire continents. Sea levels rose and fell. Forests vanished. New landscapes appeared. To survive, humans couldn't simply endure. They had to adapt. Some groups followed migrating herds into unfamiliar lands. Others discovered new hunting strategies. Some learned to survive. Others slowly disappeared. Nature wasn't choosing winners. It was testing every population, one generation at a time, and every change made survival a little harder. As the climate changed, different human species found themselves sharing the same world, the same rivers, the same forests, the same hunting grounds. Eventually, their paths crossed. For generations, people imagined these encounters as endless battles. Two human species locked in a war for survival. It's a powerful story, but the evidence tells us something far more interesting. Yes, there were probably conflicts. Whenever people compete for food, shelter, or territory, conflict is almost inevitable. But that wasn't the whole story, because these ancient humans didn't only fight. Sometimes, they cooperated. They exchanged knowledge. They shared landscapes. And sometimes, they formed families. Today, many people carry between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA. That means somewhere in the distant past, a Homo sapiens and a Neanderthal met, not as enemies, but as two people. Their children survived. Their descendants survived. And thousands of generations later, their story is still written inside us. So, why did Homo sapiens survive when every other human species disappeared? The honest answer is that no one knows for certain. Science has uncovered many pieces of the puzzle, but no single piece explains the whole picture. Our ancestors may have lived in larger, more connected groups. Ideas could travel farther. A better hunting technique discovered hundreds of kilometers away might eventually reach another community. Knowledge didn't stay in one place. It spread. That meant new tools, new survival strategies, and new ways of adapting to a changing world. Small populations didn't have that advantage. A single harsh winter, a failed hunt, or the loss of a few experienced hunters could push an already fragile community toward extinction. Over thousands of years, those small setbacks began to add up, not in one dramatic moment, but one generation at a time. History wasn't shaped by a single victory. It was shaped by countless tiny moments, most of which no one alive ever witnessed. Think about that. Every language ever spoken, every city ever built, every piece of music, every scientific discovery, every family alive today exists because one branch of an ancient family tree survived, while every other branch slowly disappeared. If history had unfolded just a little differently, another human species might have been standing where we are today. They might have built civilizations, asked questions about the stars, created art, fallen in love, raised families, and wondered, what happened to us? It's a humbling thought. The story of humanity isn't really about conquest. It isn't about proving that we were better than every other human species. It's about survival, about adapting, learning, sharing, and enduring. Our ancestors didn't know they were changing history. They were simply trying to make it through another winter, another hunt, another day, and somehow, against extraordinary odds, their story became our story.